What is up, family? How is everybody doing? Um, Nobody's in yet. Give people a couple of minutes. Just waiting for a few more people to come in. Peace, T Savior. How's everybody doing? I'm just waiting for maybe a minute or two before I get in. All right, fam, it has hit the 3 minute mark, so I'm going to get right into it. I know that Emoja cannot be here, but don't worry. There's always somebody there at the front. And so today's topic is going to be living out the dream, the possibility of nationhood. And as I put on the thumbnail, it's time to reach for the stars. So the idea of nationhood for Black Americans has, in the diaspora, have captured the imagination of many Black Americans for their desire to return home, especially on the continent of their ancestors. Now, this is a loaded topic, and I'm going to be doing both the pros and the cons, and I have a couple of questions, as you see in the link in the description. So the very first question that I pose is, what are the reasons why nationhood is the best option? And it's very simple. The reason why nationhood is the best option is, I'll give five main points: the racial wealth gap, police brutality, racial stereotypes and microaggressions, mental health, education. Now, why are all five of these factors are important? Well, when it comes to the racial wealth gap, we know that blacks and whites have a disproportionate gap between how much they earn and the overall wealth that we have. It is estimated that between 90 to 97% of all of the wealth is held within white hands, whereas only 3% of it is held into the other minority groups, and specifically black people, about 1 to 2%. The median net worth of the average white family was $171,000 compared to just a measly $17,150 for black families. And this was in 2016, and this was according to the Brookings Institute. That wealth gap has not shrunken, with the average current racial wealth gap being approximately 164,000 more between blacks and whites. And it would take an estimate 228 years before the average black family will be able to catch up with the average white family. And we all know what this is due to. This is due to the legacy of slavery, due to the legacy of Jim Crow, redlining, the destruction of black towns that have kept us all down. We cannot forget about the GI Bill. We cannot forget the fact that our black families, when they returned from World War II, instead of being met with paychecks, were met with a bunch of bullets and were met with ropes and trees. We cannot forget that the fact that in 1860, Mississippi held the most amount of millionaires, large in part due to slaves, and how South Carolina was one of the wealthiest states in the Union due to its legacy of slavery. We cannot forget about the fact that it was us slaves who created the richest country in the world, where as much slaves are worth as the average house. Yet we have not been compensated for our very work. We still face a racial income gap where the average white family earns about somewhere between 75% more than the average black family. Even when a black family goes to college and gets high education, they are still lower than the average white person with a high school diploma and some who have withdrawn. Our black families and our black women are held down constantly by student debt. Yet somehow, for some reason, we are supposed to take it. We are supposed to feel grateful and happy about this. Well, I'm not for it. I'm not for being for a country that, despite all of my hard workings, they still will not give me what I respect and what I deserve. We advocate for entrepreneurship, yet only 2% of black businesses have multiple employees, with the vast majority of black businesses only having just a single employee, and only bring around, according to Black Demographics in 2016, about close to $137 billion in annual revenue, capping down our potential. In this pandemic, we've seen almost half of black businesses have shut down. Many of them will never return again. The second reason has to do with police brutality, where black people are twice as likely to die at the hands of police. Black people are more likely to be used by excessive force by police, and police are more likely to racially profile. We see this with stop and frisk. We see this with mass incarceration. We've seen it as far back as the Black Code, where black people were arrested for vagrancy laws, where black people were put onto convict leasing, where black people were made to die. The police have always used to surveil us. First, they started as the slave patrols in the South. White men of all stripes had to join. The goal was to keep and control black people. We see countless people such as Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rekia Boyd, Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner suffer at the hands of police, and all they get is administrative leave, and we can't even afford to breathe. They still getting their paychecks, but our people are under down deck, never to be heard or seen again, their dreams destroyed. We will never know their full potential or their full scope. And we are supposed to stay in a country where we don't feel safe. We can't even be in our own home. We can't be in our own neighborhood. We can't walk down the street. We cannot go to the store. We cannot stand on the side and sell cigarettes. We can't do anything. And we deal with that comes from the racial stereotypes and microaggressions that have plagued us for over 400 years. The stereotype of the Uncle Ruckus, the stereotype of the Pickaninny, the stereotype of Mammy, Sambo, and all these other groups have used to humiliate us and to see us nothing more as docile slaves that have no mind, no thinking of our own, but instead robots. This is what they think about us. And we have to deal with the constant microaggressions of you are good looking for a black person, or that you're dark skinned. Oh, you're good for a dark skinned person. This is taking a toll on our psyche. It's taking a toll on how we view ourselves and our self esteem. Right now, we are facing existential crisis, and we are supposed to stay here. Do you really want to stay with a group of people that look like QAnon? Do you really want to be around people who believe that Barack Obama was a Muslim in the birther movement? Do we really want to live in this society? And let's not forget education. Where black students have been unable to achieve their full potential. They've underachieved in test scores. They've been unable to get access to quality grants. We rely on Pell Grants. We are debt with student debt. Many of us have been unable to finish high school because we don't have the full resources and full support system that is needed. And these are the five reasons why nationhood is the best option to address all five of these issues and to be able to control our political, economic, and social reality. We will be able to set the agenda, set the standard, and establish our own curriculum, where we will be able to choose the languages of our choice, and we will be able to address the trauma that has held the Black community down for over 400 years, where we will finally be able to heal and come to terms with our existence and our purpose. This is why nationhood is important, and this is the reason why we want it now. Our ancestors dreamed of this. Our ancestors begged for this from the days of slavery, from those of Prince Hall, Paul Cuffey, James Forten, to those such as the president of Liberia, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. Nationhood was the ultimate goal. Freedom was the ultimate goal. Liberation was the ultimate goal. Determination was the ultimate goal. This goes into the second question. Well, how will we address the concerns of nationhood? No one sees nationhood as being a utopia. No one sees nationhood as being the end all, be all, the panacea for everything. Nationhood will not be a smooth transition. Nationhood will be a tough process. Nationhood will take constant mobilization, constant organizing, constant spreading the vision, and constant studying. I'm here to be upfront with you with the challenges of nationhood, military wise, economics, and politics wise. There'll be many Black people who are concerned that where will we go? How will we be able to function? What will our government be? What country do you think would have the greatest impact? And how will we address these concerns? I'm here to lay out a concrete plan indicating those steps that are being made to be addressed. As our previous live stream said on Sunday last week, it was Liberia for nationhood and the case for Liberia, and I still advocate for the case of Liberia. By the way, if there's anybody in the chat that want to ask questions, y'all can ask questions. I know it sounds like I'm going on a monologue, and this is all well scripted. This is not scripted. I just am just like going off the top of my head. I'm just real passionate about this. So if there's any questions that you want to ask, let me know in the chat. I really want to be engaged with y'all. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all agree or disagree? Let me know what y'all think. As we all know, Liberia was founded by free slaves, first beginning the journey in 1820. As a matter of fact, yesterday marked the 201st anniversary of when the first African Americans arrived in Liberia, first landing in Sierra Leone. Many of them suffered from malaria. It was 88 free Blacks on the Elizabeth from New York. Baruti, thank you for having that. Let me put that on real quick. He says, how can HBCUs, particularly STEM-oriented ones like A&T, FAMU, Howard, Prairie be helpful in the nationhood process in building infrastructure and linkages with African nations? Well, these HBCUs can be helpful by first teaming up with colleges and universities in Africa and creating a program with it. And I was trying to do that actually when I was in South Africa, when I was at the University of Johannesburg, and I wanted to create a program for African American students to go to South Africa and South African students to go to my North Carolina A&T, especially considering the fact that we had the American Society of Civil Engineers. I had spoken to some people within there, the civil engineering technology department, because they have two different ones. They just don't have civil engineering. They have civil engineering technology as well. And I tried to reach out to them with that. So one of the first ways we can do that is first, making connections with universities that are already on the ground. And since I've narrowed it down, since specifically I was talking about Liberia, it could be, the University of Liberia, Cuttington University, you have William Tubman University, you have Booker T. Washington Institute in Kakata, Liberia. You can start by making those connections. And once you've made those connections with those universities, you can allow them to start investing and show the connection between them. And when you talk about the connection between Liberia and Black America, it's going to encourage more HBCUs to want to invest there because they'll realize that their schools have had a connection with that university and Black college grads have had a connection with Liberia. And then once you do that, you can invest money and provide the resources. Because the biggest thing that African universities are going to need, because they're going to need college education, and college education is not common a lot in Africa. There's a lot of shortages of universities in Africa, and the highest is the University of Cape Town, but they're not even ranked within the top 50 or the top 100. They're ranked like 120th, and they're the best in Africa. So we need more capital resources. If we have more capital resources, especially human capital, the teachers who can teach this, it's going to be huge for the development of our nation because it's going to allow for us to meet those needs and, of course, meet those goals that we want. So that's how HBCUs can help with, building nations. And so I tried to reach out to my teachers. Well, I tried to reach out to some of my engineering teachers, but a lot of stuff was going on with the coronavirus, and I wasn't able to fully elaborate my plan yet. So not much was able to come out of that, but I hope to do more of it in the future. But as of right now, not much came out of it. That's the whole situation there. I tried to reach out, like I said, to my engineering department, specifically the civil engineering department, but nothing came up of it that much. I'm gonna have to, do more of that as the year progressed and heading on into next year. Like I said, I hope to have this connection, but not a lot has came into fruition right now. The continuation with the addressing the concerns of nationhood is many people are concerned, well, where are we going to go? And as I said, we focus on Liberia because of the connection. And, it already has the resources, it has the rare earth metals, it has the minerals, it has the largest rainforest in West Africa, it has hydropower, it has more than enough to create rice, cassavas, mangoes, rambutan. This will be the location to go to. And like I said before, yesterday marked the 201st anniversary of when the first American-led Back to Africa movement was created, when 88 free Black men and women went to Sierra Leone. And of course, they suffered from malaria, and the British government was kind of iffy on them being accepted. So, yeah, but this is where the start of Liberia was. It was February 6th, 1820. So, especially considering that's Black American history, it's something to be vital. So now that the location has happened, well, some people will say, well, how will the government be? Well, we already know that if you studied their politics, they're very similar to the United States. So Liberia has a Congress, a Senate, a House of Representatives. The Congress only has 30 people, I think, and the House of Representatives has I think like 40 people. Um, I do know that Montserrado has the most amount, and then the smaller areas like Grand Cru, and then they had the least amount. Montserrado is where Monrovia is. It was one of the first towns there, so it of course contains most of the population there. About 25 to 29% of Liberia's population lives within the Monrovia area. So it's very similar to the United States. So it'd be easy for us to adapt in terms of politics wise, in terms of culturally, in terms of language wise. It'd be easier for that. So that would take care of the government. And what we would just need to do is we would need to know the overall African American population and then figure out how many representatives to represent per these people. So for every 30,000 people, for every 40,000 people, you would have a Black American resident, and this would make it easier for citizenship to be taking place because they would know how much people one constituent would represent, and that would deal with the politics of it. Um, how will we deal with it economically? So I know that economically, especially in Liberia, the average income is like $621 per year. The economy has been struggling a little bit ever since Joshua got into office. There's a lack of development in many regions. It's okay in Monrovia, but when you get to places like Baldwin County or Bumby County, there's high undevelopment. But that can easily be addressed with the fact that you have the African Free Trade, the AFCFTA, I can never get that right, agreement, where 54 African countries will be able to trade with one another, will be able to cross borders, will be able to change goods. And so this can give us an advantage, knowing that we have the little bit of money that we have, and knowing that we're going to be situated most likely in West Africa, on the West African coast. That's going to give us access to the ports. And considering the fact that ECOWAS has about $668 billion and 338 million people, more than the United States have, would be a huge benefit. And Nigeria's population is expected to become the third most, surpassing the United States in 2050. So this will give us a huge market, and this will give us an advantage, knowing that we'll have that many people. We'll also have 1.2 billion people to service our goods to, and that can make us the hub of it. So that's going to address the economics, because I know a lot of people are going to say, well, who are we going to trade with? Who will be our partners? The African Continental Free Trade Agreement would be our primary one. And then you could trade with the Caribbean, because later on down, it's going to go later on as I talk about how we would engage in the international world. There's an organization called the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of States. So, that will be playing part of it as well. Military, that's an iffy subject. I'm not going to get too much into that. But we will be able to make military cooperation with countries. So that is something that we will do with the governments that we work with, based on what our interests are and what goals that we want. So, I know these are concerns for many people. They think that we're giving a utopia vision, and we're not giving a utopia vision. We're simply saying that this is going to be a tough road process. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, you know, unicorns and stuff. It's going to take a lot of struggles. We're going to have to be concerned with the fact that we might deal with a recession, that we might have to deal with, the economy contracting, and that's okay. It's okay. It's better to be independent and figure this stuff out than not to try it at all. Um, so the third question is, and this will go into the third question: how will nationhood affect Black Americans and the diaspora's sense of pride? Um, it's going to affect our pride and for four reasons, and the 4 points are patriotism, a sense of belonging, sense of destiny, and a sense of history. And that's what I look at specifically when I talk about Liberia and when I talk about the west coast of Africa, is you feel a sense of belonging, and you feel a sense of that's your country and your goal is to do right for the country. For a lot of Black Americans, patriotism is really a touchy subject with America, because you don't really like to celebrate the 4th of July because of the history of slavery and the fact that many of the founders were slaveholders, and many of them wanted us to be deported. If you look at people like, you know, what was his name? Patrick Henry, James Madison, James Monroe, Thomas Jefferson, Bushrod Washington, Francis Scott Key, the Supreme Court Justice John Marshall. All of these people advocated for the American Colonization Society, which basically wanted to send us to Liberia and establish its colony. They have signatures of that. So, knowing that you're in a country that really never wanted you and ideally wanted you gone to the continent of Africa is not something to be proud of. It's not something. I don't take too much pride in this country, and that's just being honest about it. There's a lot of issues, and based on what we're seeing right now, there's just not a lot of window room for us to be here, and it's damaging our psyches, damaging our social, self-esteem. And so having that nation will give us a sense of pride, a sense of history, and a sense of destiny, because we know where we're going. We have somewhere, we have something that we can rally around, we can have something to unify us. And now, we can go forward. We can now reach for the stars. And to add to the sense of history, it creates a storyline for us. It shows us that, this is where we were and this is where we're going. I have fundamental issues with the 1619 project, and the 1619 project rubs me wrong for all the wrong reasons, not because what the conservative apologists say, but it's not what a lot of Black Americans thought. I define our sense of story for Black Americans in diaspora as being kidnapped from Africa and wanting to return back home. We've always wanted a desire to return back home. We've always wanted to come back to the continent of our ancestors. The slave community was an example of this. And in the book, in the slave community, they talked about how many African Americans desired to want to come back home and wanted to keep their language, their culture, and their traditions. So, that's how our history should be, our storyline should be, is to get back home. A few of our ancestors were able to get home with the establishment of Liberia, but not many were able to go. And that should be our goal, is to finish what they created. That's always been, my desire, and the reason why I have so much emphasis on Liberia is to finish and continue what our ancestors did. And it wasn't just, and when people talk about Liberia, they're talking about just Black Americans. No, we're talking about, Jamaicans. We're talking about Haitians. We're talking about Barbadians or Barbadians, depending on what you want to call them. We're talking about Nigerians and Beninese people who were Dahomey were captives, Igbo were captives, Yoruba were captives. Marcus Garvey, was wanted to go to Liberia. And something else that, would, you know, affect our sense of pride is, that was where, the African Orthodox Church was supposed to be at, which was part of Marcus Garvey, and it was supposed to be part of, Liberia as well, in the UNIA, whose main goal was to go to Liberia. So it would create that storyline that we would be able to continue on. And for me, that matters. It does matter, and it should matter to you. It matters to everybody in the BL, and it should matter to every Black American. Why is it that our history line is always, it's never really written from a true sense of determination. It's always like, please, America, please give us equality. And that's not always the case. And it wasn't the case. If you look deep down in these, history books, you know, and you've actually studied, American slavery, a lot of people, they were rebellious, you know, they were feisty. And I want to hear that instead. I have my book in the slave community, and one of the things that they were talking about is how many slave revolts were happening, and that we really did stuff in a group mentality, which I think we can do now. So, you know, that to me is why nationhood would represent that. It would be the culmination of everything we've been through. The the accumulation of the Nat Turner revolts, or the Gabriel Prossers, the Denmark Vesey, who, by the way, Denmark Vesey's wife went to Liberia. For those who do not know, with her two children, his third wife went to Liberia. Just so FYI, it's a culmination of, in July 1845, 75 slaves from Maryland counties armed themselves and began marching towards Pennsylvania state line. And the fact that they were fighting, 30 slaves in Missouri, emulated the Kentucky fugitives in 1850 when they armed themselves and began marching towards freedom. Many slaveholders were talking about how, their maroon communities were, difficult and one of the greatest threats. So this is what nationhood encompasses. It encompasses everything. Um, so you said, um, is your philosophy nationhood, or must it be an African American country? How? My To address that, my personal opinion on that is, um, I'm going to say more towards African American country, and the only reason why I say it is because African Americans are the only group where we don't have a solid majority anywhere in the world. Um, and that we don't have a country. Well, technically Liberia, but we don't have a country to compare to, you know, let's say, Namibians or Zimbabweans or South Africans or Lesotho, the people of Lesotho, Mozambicans. We don't have that. And so for me, I would want that African American country to know that African Americans would have somewhere to go and we could all be there. Because ultimately, that's what's really handicapped, the Back to Africa movement is a lot of African Americans want to, oh, my bad. Hold on. My bad. Hold on. Let me do something real quick. I just saw you, so I was just like, let me get him in real quick.
Yeah, I was just looking at the questions. There was some really good questions. I just wanted to, before I get out of service, headed up to the mountain, see if I could chop it up just a little bit. Go ahead and finish answering the question. You're doing a great job, bro.
Yeah, so that's why for me, I focus on an African American country because we need that. And I know we want to connect with the diaspora, and the diaspora, of course, is the big factor. But for a lot of African Americans, they just want somewhere to go where they control it, where they can dictate it for once. You know, we've never had that. We don't know what it's like to not be in a majority. We don't know what it's like to actually run a government through and through legislative, executive, judicial, military, politics, culture. We don't know what that's like. And so to have that destiny, that sense of determination, that sense of, finally we have somewhere we belong, that's what matters. And that's why I advocate more for an African American country, because that's what our people are yearning for. They want somewhere where it's just for them. And to me, that is what the important part is. So, Baruti, I'm more for an African American country. Um, but I definitely wouldn't mind having satellite communities in Zambia, in Namibia, and in Botswana. But you need that African American, homeland before. You can go speak,
Right.
Umoja.
Yeah, I think that like a country would be dope, but then see, we got to think about it because when you say country, it's easy for somebody to be like, "Oh man," like look at it, one of the bigger ones, South Africa, and be like, "How you gonna manage that?" Right? But then you also got uh, Burundi and a couple I can't even pronounce. Shoot, really, Rwanda is one of the small countries in Africa, but I definitely would like a country. However, when I'm being realistic, not that many of us is gonna come in the front end. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're gonna be able to give us Nigeria and we just like manage it, right? And then obviously the locals aren't just gonna be like, yeah, y'all Americans could just come in and just run our country, you know. So I think just getting us over there, period, first, and working together over there, I think that's just vital. Not just staying here talking about me and you was talking about it just the other day, I think, on the phone when I called you. But I think it's vital that we just get over there and start doing the work. Cause it's not gonna I personally do not see us organizing how we're going to run a country in Africa while in America. I have no confidence in that. And that's because we don't even organize to do stuff in America while we in America. So I don't see how we're going to sit here in America with all the stuff that's going on in America and organize how we're going to organize in Africa, if that makes sense. So I'm like, let's just get there. Let's just get there because it is a bunch of African Americans in Africa already. They're just spread out just like they are here in America. So it's like it just has to get the level of organization has to just get on steroids, basically. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but at the same time, I also can disagree with that because a lot of countries that came to be actually came out as a result of being outside the country. So Israel, for example, was outside of Israel. Cuba and Puerto Rico, especially the Puerto Rican flag, came outside of Puerto Rico. It was not in Puerto Rico. It came from Cuba, and it came when they came together in New York. That so organization can happen. It's just we have to be very clear about it. But you're right. We also need to be on the continent, and
See, my
we
thing,
need
Jay,
to.
about it is you see that we you talking about though, we not doing anything. I don't. I'm not saying that it can't. Ideally, we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. We would be talking about what's our next move in private instead of having a public conversation because it's not enough of us actually organizing together. A bunch of us are going over there by ourselves and planning our getaway for our families. What I'm not saying that it can't, right? Like, I'm saying that it's not happening. Like, the level of organization that's needed is just
Oh
not
yeah, you're
happening.
right. Oh
That's
yeah,
what I
oh yeah,
mean.
oh yeah, you're
You know
right.
what I'm
You're right.
saying?
You're right.
Like it's
Yeah.
just not happening. And like, yeah,
Yeah, the
it's just
organization is
it's
not
really unfortunate.
happening.
It's so
Yeah, it's
unfortunate, but damn.
it is unfortunate, and you know, but Ruthie, to just your point, when you say you're saying that Liberia is still an African American country, it's still an Americanized country, and it still has that African American culture system. They still have their Liberian flag. They still have the city names. A lot of stuff. It still is Americanized. It's more integrated. With the natives and the Americos and the recaptors now the Congo people, but it still technically is an African American country, and so that's why. And the reason why I say Liberia the most and why I tend to focus on that and why we should and how it can be the next destination is because I always compare it to think about a skating ring. Think about a skater on the ice skating ring, right? And this is what, Umoja is saying. It's going to get back to when he's talking about we're all dispersed, right? And African Americans think that, if I go there, it's going to be great. No, actually, what they're doing is they're slowing it down. They're slowing the development of Africa. And here's why. When you're spread out on an ice skate, like on an ice skating rink, when you spin wide, you spin slowly. As you concentrate and as you pull in, you become tighter, you spin faster.
Well, that
It's
boy dropping them. Get him.
angular momentum. That's why when skaters spin really fast, they pull in and they spin very tightly because you can do stuff faster because more energy is being concentrated into a particular area. Knowing that Liberia is not too big of a country, it's relatively small. The population's 5 million people. You can concentrate African Americans within that country in a few cities and you can develop it more rapidly because everything is concentrated. Everybody's there. It's not scattered where we gotta then have to take stuff slowly and that stuff. No, if you were to concentrate specifically on Liberia, knowing the history of it and knowing that technically it is an African American country, it would allow for us to develop much faster. And so, to add to Emoja's point, you are right. We do need to get to the continent, and that's what I'm trying to do. Post graduation, all this stuff. I'm really trying to get to the continent to show people that this can be done. Because, like somebody said, all it takes is really a small group of African Americans to go to that country for stuff to drastically change. So that's what needs to happen.
What do you
You
because
want
when we talk
you want me to
about
get to
this,
the fourth question, or would you also like to add to this as well? Excuse me, my bad.
yeah, matter of fact, yeah, because my question is kind of a little bit off a little bit. So yeah, go ahead and go to the fourth one.
The fourth one is how do you envision the nation will be? And this does not have to be, really detailed. It could just be, how do you think this nation will be? How will it look? How will it function? What do you think this nation will ultimately achieve?
Um, you talking about an African, right?
Yeah.
I heard you talking about it when I was just listening. A sense of pride, a sense of belonging, because obviously I don't think any right-minded Black American actually has pride in America, if they're being honest. A sense of belonging, and that's obvious because it'd be something that's yours, and I know and I've heard stories that like you can go over there and be blue black, but if you American, they still think that that you they won't accept you as like African. So having that sense of belonging would be there. Um, and I think having that, I think it would change history for Black Americans like instantly, like especially as the more generations go. Even it'll be some pride in America, like, you know what, we can just go and visit our cousins in Afghanistan or Liberia whatever. Just to have a home. All the stuff that we talk about other races having, like, well, Mexicans can go home. They have their own language, and they have Spain, and they have Italy. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But we also have African. We also have Liberia. You know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
it'll change so much. It'll change so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the importance of nationhood is it will allow for Black Americans and the diaspora it will be represented politically, socially, and economically, and it will allow Black Americans to keep their identity while exploring African culture and heritage. So, an example would be speaking Loma, Vai, Pele, Bandi, Kru, Kron, Mano, Mandingo, Creole, Gribo, Geo. So that's what nationhood will all envision for me. But also, like I said in the thumbnail, we'll be able to reach for the stars. One of the stories that really bothers me and it really hurts me was it was this Zambian Afronaut, and he wanted Africans to get to the moon, but he didn't have the resources. He didn't have the resources to join the space race, and I felt like that motivates me every day because I want to see that dream come true. I want to see our nation go to space. I want to see our nation host the Olympic Games. I want our nation to be part of that $1 trillion club. And that's really what I envision this nation would be: the fulfillment of all of our ancestors' dreams, or our ancestors who could never have had their dreams recognized, or had their dreams crushed, or their dreams of being an industrialist, an engineer, being a surveyor, finally comes into fruition. So that's what I feel like nation will ultimately envision. And then the last question that I have, and then you guys can just answer questions or ask questions, or, we can continue to have this conversation, is how will our nation engage with the world? And I said, of course, it's because we're going to be heavily engaged in the international arena. We're going to be internationally involved, maintaining close ties with the UN, but also expanding investments and cooperations within the African Union, ECOWAS, the East African Community, the Southern African Development Community, the African Development Bank, Economic Community of Central Africa, African Caribbean Pacific States. You also have the Community of the Sahel and Saharan States. There's so many organizations that we can get involved within the continent of Africa that we can become part of, that we can really exert our sphere of influence to become a regional, a continental, and possibly global power. So that's why I would love nationhood, because we'll be able to engage with the world the way that we want to, um, and what we feel like is our best interest. So you can answer that question if you would like to, and then I'm going to also answer some of these questions.
Personally, like all that, ditto to all that. I'm also thinking about my kids. You know what I mean? Like, for me, is just as much about getting away from the position that we in now. I just don't understand how we so comfortable with it. Like, because when you say what you said, I'm like, that's a big task, and I could literally see why people really is just comfortable having somebody else do that. Honestly, if I'm being honest, not me, but I'm just trying to empathize a little bit. And I'm like, people don't even understand what you're talking about. Why in the hell would I expect them to want to work towards it for themselves, right? But then I think about it on the smallest scale. Like, what about your kids? Why would we want our kids still in a place where they just treat it so badly? And so that's what it is for me. It's like both. It's like both of that the macro level and the micro level. The micro is like the here and now, our position right now. The macro is the stuff that you talking about, sitting on the having a seat at the UN and stuff like that, right? But yeah, man, yeah, I just see the big picture of it, and our picture is disastrous right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
I'm trying to get out of that
I'll get to
disaster.
your point too, and then I'm going to address Baruti's comment. He says, suppose African Americans receive dual citizenship in a nation outside Liberia, say Rwanda, Zambia, or Gabon. Why wouldn't being an ethnic group African American next to other ethnic groups within a nation not represent nationhood as well? And the reason why that would not represent nationhood as well is not because we couldn't have our own stuff there, but you do realize that how that country's defined is defined by their indigenous ethnic groups or defined by their ethnic groups or the majority ethnic groups that are there. So, you know, going to those countries, you would have to be really careful on like what your agenda would be because having an agenda that might vary from different ethnic groups could cause ethnic strife and could cause conflict. So it
Well,
wouldn't represent it. Oh, go ahead.
you don't even have to go that deep into that question. It's African Americans spread out over Africa right now, living there. You never hear nothing about no nation. Like they're just seen as Americans who are living in Africa now, depending on where they're at. There is no African American agenda. No big ones. I know of places where like there are like communities and stuff like that. Like stuff is happening, but in terms of nation, that's not happening at all. You know what I mean? And a lot of people aren't interested. They just go over there to Africa.
And to be
They
on,
out of America and in Africa, and that's cool. I ain't even mad at that.
yeah, and to even and yeah, and I know something. I like to go very deep. I know I go very deep. It's just how I roll. I didn't see it as deep. I just see it as just me just giving a basic explanation. But yeah, like and also you had to think about it when we talk about nationhood and specifically an ethnic group. We're talking about defining it. So an example would be like, let's say you're in Tanzania or you're in Nigeria. It's a heavily Muslim populated area. Let's say just saying for example, or a different religion, right? They're gonna ask you or going to demand that you Islamize or you adopt to their way of life. And but let's say you don't agree with it. Let's say that hey, that's not kind of how I roll. It's going to be a conflict because as more of you come in, there's going to be that culture conflict. And so if you have nationhood like we do, where you control it, where you dictate it, we don't have to worry about that now. That becomes eliminated. And so those communities that are in, let's say, Tanzania or in Nigeria, they are representatives of our nation state. So it's the Liberian community in Tanzania, and we can establish the Liberian organization in Dar es Salaam, and then we could just make connections with the locals. And so that's what representation is. That's what nation is all about, is recognition. And people are not going to recognize an ethnic group within their country as a nation. They're just going to recognize you as y'all just Americans, y'all just Black Americans in Tanzania. You're not a nation. So, nah. To address 6-6 Savage Point, yeah, Liberia would be on par with Indonesia and the Philippines and all of these Southeast Asian countries. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a first world country by now. I think that if Liberia was able to grow, it would have been able to attract more of us. Because there's always been the reason why Liberia did not become a first world nation faster is because not enough of us were able to go. We didn't have the money and resources to go. It's not because Liberia was backwards or Liberia was this, that, and the third. It was the fact that we did not have enough African Americans who had the money and resources to go. A lot of the African Americans that went to Liberia relied on the American Colonization Society or relied on their slaveholders manumitting and demanding that they go to Liberia. A lot of African Americans who wanted to go did not have the money and the resources. It's the reason why, they went to Kansas and went to the north instead of Liberia was because of the financial resources. If we had been able to go in mass, Liberia would have been a dominant power right now. And, many Pan Africanists expressed that, like Marcus Garvey and Edward Wilmot Blyton realized that, that if we were able to have been able to go in mass, we would have had an empire. We would have been a global power to be reckoned, and that could have altered the scramble for Africa forever. But we'll never know because our people never had the opportunity. To address this point, if you are, yeah, you can claim both nations as your own, but even when you talk about Zambia or Zimbabwe, they're right next to each other. So, I mean, it's not like it's Zimbabweans and Egyptians or Zimbabweans and Ghanaians in the country. Zambia and Zimbabwe pretty much have very similar ethnic groups. They almost speak similar languages. So even with that, they're really not too different. Now they may clash over power, but in terms of culture wise, they're very similar. It's like Yoruba and Igbo are very similar languages. They're almost part of the similar language group. So even with that, you can claim it as your own, but still, those multi-ethnic nation groups, they're indigenous to the land. They're spread out across that land. A lot of Africa's borders contain the same ethnic groups that were part of the same land. They just the colonial power just cut through it. So even then and there, that plays a factor into it. Um, any more questions? Any more questions? Emoji, you got anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. It was something I wanted to say, but shoot, my brain, I'm driving, so I didn't forgot what the heck it was. I don't even remember. But come to me before you end it, then I'll speak on it.
All right, no problem. Yeah, so this is why, for me, Nationhood is a huge advocate or a huge goal. Uh, there's so many possibilities, and I feel like we need to recognize our possibilities and not so much be handicapped by it. We would be able to control, you know, our trading policies. Like I said, you have to imagine that, and it'll be so much cheaper to do stuff. Like we could create our own leagues. We would be able to speak our own language. We would be able to have this on television for news reports. Imagine the weather forecast, or your daily news being spoken in your language by your people in your homeland. And isn't this what we want? Because we say we want to build communities, so why not gather around Liberia and let's build it? Um, yeah, like why not just do that? I feel like
Imagine,
that would be
um, imagine if the case of reparations was 100% geared towards. All right, well, y'all just give us some money and we're gonna go build up Liberia. Imagine if that was
right.
the case of reparations.
Like that's the thing, because even when you talk about reparations, one of the things, you're still living in the country. It's not like you're a separate entity. Like we give you reparations and then all of a sudden things are going to be handy dandy. No, you still are living with a group of people that caused harm to you, and that's going to create even more tension. I know some people say, well, it's how America can heal. Yeah, but the thing about it is that they have to have an interest. Like things are not done for a morality reason. Things are done from an interest reason. If they don't have an interest, then they're not going to do it. Any more questions? Any more questions? This is an interactive live stream. I finished very quickly. Um, if there's any more questions you would like to ask, you can ask them. Umoja, I hope that your question comes by so that, I really would like to hear it. So, yeah. Well, Umoja got off the live. So, that's really all that I have. Okay, he's back on. Okay, he's back on. He's back on. Okay, he's back on.
Yeah, you.
Okay, I was like, man, I might have to end the live.
I just got I just got cut off. Um, I really want to like encourage because the sense that I get, the more we work on this stuff, like just like I was telling you, the sense that I get is that, well, let me put it like this, and I can't remember where I said this at, but it's like you have a business, or you have something that you're offering to people. Let's just say it's a business. The first thing that people talk about in advertising is like, okay, know your base, know your audience, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we know our audience is black people. We know our audience is black people, right? Now the
Mm-hmm.
service that we're quote unquote offering, follow me, is nationhood, freedom, liberty, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if we're doing everything from going door to door to sending electronic emails to sending packets out, I'm just making stuff up, but I'm talking about how we like share our stuff, we talk about our stuff, and the customers aren't buying it. So now some people will say, well, your product is trash. You know what I mean? They already got this product and you're in a saturated business. That's not the case. Some people will say, well, maybe it's the way that you packaging it, but no, we got everybody's in. So some people, I lean more towards like, okay, well, those of us who even say that we want it really don't want it. That's
No,
what I'm coming
yeah,
down. That's what I'm coming
I,
down to. And then my fear, and then I'll be finished. My fear is that though, those of us who are really fed up, they going, but we going in, but we're going in singles, we're going in families, and we're doing. Some of us are doing well, some of us are struggling. But instead of still coming together and even do that, we just will not come together to work on stuff, man. It is
yeah, you're
blowing my
right. I
mind.
also, I
You know what I
also say
mean?
when you add to the product, I feel like it's not the product isn't good. We don't even have a product.
True that. True
You
that.
know, I think like the thing about it is like they have to see it. It's like we're giving them something, but it's like I don't like the top point, where's the land at? But it's kind of like that. Cause like they want to see it with their eyes. If they see like, oh, they're there in Africa, like they're actually getting stuff, I can maybe come and
Exactly.
join, So
Exactly.
I feel like we it's not that the product is being advertised, thing, we just don't have a product. It's like saying,
But
me
but
saying, come and purchase my book, but I don't have a book.
you ain't
My
wrote
book's
nothing.
not
You
published
ain't wrote
yet.
nothing.
It's
Right.
yeah.
But then though, on the flip side of that, we do got several people on the continent right now though. We got several people on the continent right now. But the important part though, to do what we're talking about, we need people. I'm talking about we need people who don't even have money to go and visit Africa right now. Just to have the body so that we can go to a government and say this how many people we have. You know what I mean? Like we're not gonna me and you aren't gonna go to Liberia and negotiate a land trade. Me, you, and Barutu is not gonna go to South Africa and negotiate a land trade for a quote unquote nation of black people. No, you gotta have some people. It's like show and prove. So it's like on one hand we can't say that well you gotta show people the land because when we go and try to get the land, the people who got the land gonna say well you gotta show us the people. You gotta show us the resources and the expertise that you got. So it's like you just gotta
Hmm.
catch 2022 if that's the case. And that's why I'm like, okay, so where the people at? Because everybody talk, everybody got the answers, but when it comes to together, then everything is different. It seems like.
Yeah. I also think, like I said, I also think we have to do more going on other like collaboration with other like platforms because we
Absolutely.
have we have such a small audience. Like I don't think we even talked to more than like 1,000 people, honestly. Like, because I feel like
Right.
there's more people than what we think. We just don't know they're there because we don't have a huge
I know it is.
microphone. So
I know it is. Yes, sir.
so
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Look,
so I
I
feel like
mean,
once
like
we do.
I was just in Facebook group. Excuse me, Jay, but I know my phone is gonna cut off soon. Where I'm
Oh,
at.
go
So if
ahead.
it cut off, don't think, especially if it's right in the middle of you talking to something, don't think it's like some rude stuff or anything else. But I know I'm gonna shut off soon. But I know it is because I start looking around Facebook groups and just looking at they got a bunch of black sick groups for some of them are focused solely on Africa, some of them are just focused. It is a lot of black Americans who trying to leave here, but it's not that many who actually want to be in control of their own. Though. That's the thing. That's the difference. It's a huge difference by just saying, you know what? I want to go live in Cuba. I want to go live in Chile. I want to go live in Zambia. I want to go live in like that's different than just saying like, no, I want something for my own people, for myself. There's a huge difference. Like straight up.
Hmm.
And that's what's lacking. That's what but it's a lot of people who want to leave America. A whole lot. Like it's more than a few. I was just investigating some Facebook groups, and there's a lot. People do want to leave. People don't want to leave together though. People trying to get theirs. I'm gonna let you finish it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to leave, but I feel like that. I know that sometimes we don't want to take like that leadership or that control route. And Baruti, I read your comment. I understand what you were getting about. If they're dual citizenship, they have dual identity, so they'd also be part of, things. So that would count as nationhood. Although it would be assimilation into it, but it would you could I can see where you could see advocate for nationhood. But yeah, there's a lot of people that want to leave, but I think that we would have to do that. And I also feel like you would have to give seminars. So like you would have to train people to lead in these areas. You know, people are just not going to take those roles by themselves. You actually have to have an apparatus and a nurturing system that does it. Um, so once you have that system in place, I feel like people are gonna fall in line, but you have to have those leaders that lead by example, and it's gonna require us to do it. So yeah, that's all I have to say. This was a very short live. It was only me and him. So we've reached the hour mark. Umoja, if you want to make any closing remarks, go ahead and do it. And then I'll make my closing remarks if necessary.
I thought my phone had cut all the way out.
You got something to say? Because you want to make any closing remarks? Because I'm about to make my closing remarks, and then we can end the live stream.
Nope, nope. My
All right. Oh yeah, I see your cell signal is going out. Yeah, Mojo, I see that your cell signal is going out. I see that your cell signal is going out. So yeah, 6 Savage. Right, you're right. I didn't even know Liberia until I was out of college. Many African Americans don't know about Liberia. Yeah, a lot of them don't. And I wish that we do know, and that's what I'm trying to establish that connection. We need to know Liberia's history more. It needs to be told by every Black American, so that we can understand the possibilities of nationhood, living out the dream of our ancestors. Um, any last questions? And then, but thank you guys so much for coming into this live. Please, please, please make sure that you guys go on the BAIO website. Please sign up to the website. We would really want you guys to be a part of this. So please sign up to the website. HTTP at the BAIO Africstan. Make sure that you sign up BAIOAfricstan.org. So thank you guys, family. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure we keep this thing going. Make sure we keep up on that knowledge. I'm Jabari Lamb, the expertise on Liberia and the BAO Liberia. Peace, fam.